everybody. It is Kyle Brandon with the Storybox Podcast. Welcome back to another episode. We've got a great guest on here today. His name's Duke Paulson. Duke is the executive director of the Tacoma Rescue Mission. He's been married to his beautiful best friend, Amy, for the last 26 years, and they have 4 kids. They've got Kiefer, Keeley, Brooke, and Riker, all young adults. Their youngest is 17, oldest is 23, and the other 2 are in the middle there. They currently live in Tacoma, Washington. Duke, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, when we have people on the show, what we do is we ask them to give the audience some of their God story and context for growing up. So what was life like for Duke? What was your family like? And then ultimately, how did you come to a place of surrendering your life to Jesus and following after him in your life? So I'll let you take it from here. Michael Hanks is a home loan specialist and a sponsor of the Storybox Podcast. If you're looking to purchase a home, refinance your home loan, or gain access to the equity in your home, then reach out to Michael. All you need to do is click on the Secure Choice Lending link in the show notes, and it'll take you directly to Michael. We hope that you enjoy working with Michael, and we hope that you enjoy this Storybox Podcast.
Oh, wow. Let's get a life story in a little bit here. So I grew up, I grew up in Portland, Oregon. My family came from a pretty interesting faith background. My mom's side of the family fled Jewish persecution in the early 1900s with the World Wars. When you in the 20s and 30s and 40s, being Jewish wasn't very popular, and so actually the family became atheists and just walked away from all faith. So my mom grew up in a home with an atheist dad who was burned by didn't even want to talk about his family or history or heritage or anything.
Wow.
And her family went to church just because my grandmother wanted them to have some morals. So they went to church sometimes just because of that. I didn't care. He didn't go. He didn't want anything to do with it. So that was, my mom then met my dad and they got married when they were early 20s, 2021, or 21, 22, I think it was. And my dad grew up in a family that had originally immigrated with Brigham Young to Utah. And then because his grandfather had left Utah and married a Protestant in Seattle, neither of them could return home. He couldn't go back to Utah. She couldn't go back to Seattle. So they settled in Portland as an in-between area and grew up in a weird mix of, multiple kind of faith perspectives, or at least family histories coming together. My dad was a Christian, would say he was a Christian. My dad's faith was very much a choice. It was very much a decision. Like, this is the right way to do things. It's not it very much just, I guess, is faith and works and discipline. This is just what it says. I obey the letter of the law. I go do this, and that's how it works. My mom, so I'm the oldest of 3 boys. When I was born, I had a condition in my stomach. My mom was a nurse. I had a condition where there was a muscle that was not formed correctly in my stomach. So normally you're gaining weight as you go home as an infant, and I was losing weight and throwing up and not able to keep food down. And my mom ended up taking me to the doctor and turning me over for an emergency surgery when they realized what was going on as a 3 or 4-week-old baby, to a surgeon that she'd witnessed lose a child on the operating table just the week before. And so she was really scared, and she went to the chapel. And in the chapel at the hospital, she didn't know what to do. And someone came in and told her, "Here's how you pray." And and that this is like, she ended up literally praying and reaching out to God. And she said she had an epiphany of So this is what it's like to love someone selflessly. And so if God said he gave up his son, what's that like? What's that love mean? And ultimately that led to my mom uh, becoming a Christian. Like that's when she would say she came to understand, oh, this is what God's love means. And this is what, if he loves me this way, how do I respond? And so that was transformative for her. At the same time, actually, my grandfather, who'd been an atheist his whole life, was watching a Billy Graham crusade on TV and found himself on his knees and converted, gave his life to Christ, and so he did, like the whole family had this kind of conversion over a couple of years time. Um, and so the funny thing about what I grew up with is that I then grew up with a mix of uh, a dad who was very much rules and this is right and wrong and this is the Ten Commandments, you just follow it. And a mom who had this radical, God can do anything. He can do miracles. He can transform your life. Angels are here, like this faith, um, heart, spirit connection, and then a real legalistic perspective of here's what right and
Wow.
wrong is for my dad,
Wow.
who was an attorney. So that kind of made sense for his way of thinking. Um, So my brothers and I ended up growing up in a family with this kind of crazy dichotomy of faith. And then I would say personally for me, when I went off to college was when suddenly I'm 19, 20-year old and I have to figure out, okay, what does faith mean to me? And I'd grown up in a family that went to church and did stuff. And I would say, yeah, I believe in God, but I didn't really know what that meant to me. And so it was my early 20s when I was really trying to figure out, um, what do I believe and how does that work? And in my early 20s, I erred more on my dad's side of, well, it's just this is the right thing to do and this is a choice and you follow the rules.
Right.
And then I kept getting confronted with examples of miracles of God doing things and lives being transformed and people praying and hearing from God and crazy things that I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Um, but I kept seeing it and experiencing it. And so like had this disconnect between my heart and my heart and my head. So my head believes one thing and my heart is seeing other things and feeling other things. And so I would say my 20s was both was the trying to combine the two and understand God's big and can do both. Like there's a God who is not just a God of 2000 years ago and here's the rules we follow, but there's a God who's actually active and caring and loves us and is involved in our life today. And that um, he cares about me and what I do every day. And his Holy Spirit is around me and engaged and communicating with me every day. And so
Yep.
what am I
Yeah.
doing to engage with that? So that's been, now to my 50s. That's so 30 years later, this is kind of the following the journey of saying, okay, God, as you keep unpacking layers of this to me and reveal that to me, how do I respond? And so I think I'm just still on that journey, but that's kind of how my faith has evolved over that time.
I love that. I mean, I think so many people um, I love that you grew up with both, where mom has this experience that's like the other end of the spectrum, and dad functions, which makes sense. Like you said, he was a lawyer, right? So he thinks in that way, and it makes sense to him in that way. Um, have are your parents still around?
My mom passed away a little over 19 years ago,
Wow.
from a infection that got into her body and killed her. My
Oh my
dad's still
gosh.
alive, so yeah,
Okay.
that was she honestly, my mom had cancer so my third brother was born. She was diagnosed with cancer, like right after he was born and had to go through major cancer treatments and stuff. Well, like within a month of my brother, I kind of lost my
Wow.
mom for a couple of years to cancer and recovery. And so she was never as strong physically after that. So she was more frail. But again, just a big spirit. Crazy when my mom passed away. My mom was a homemaker. So she was a nurse when I was little. But then once we had my youngest brother and she had cancer, then she stayed home the rest of our life and worked with us, or raised the boys and did stuff at the church and volunteering and serving Sunday school and stuff like that. When she passed away, we had her memorial service and thousands of people showed up. And
Wow.
it was
Wow.
crazy as my brothers and I, like it was my brother's a pastor, were really in a church. The whole church was filled, the overflow room, people were outside. And all these people had these stories about, oh, your mom prayed for me. And then she'd send us letters and she'd follow up for decades. And so she was one of those people who was up every morning at 4:30 in the morning and prayed for a couple of hours and like marked up all of her Bibles and journals um, and just again believing the power of God's Spirit. So she'd hear about someone's need and pray for them, and then follow up and talk to them and share the miracles, and share the stories of what was God was doing, and so she had this huge ministry that we didn't really know about. We knew my mom
Wow.
prayed, and and she prayed for us, and we knew that. Um, we didn't realize how broad it was, and how many people that like people we never met before that she'd been ministering to that were like, oh no, she changed my life, or she shared God with me, or she just had this huge impact that was way beyond any position or uh, uh, you know I guess job title or anything. It was just this is what she did and how she loved people. So pretty
That
crazy.
Whoa, bro. That's amazing. And I think too for even for anybody that's watching or listening to this, if you're a homemaker or if you are in a position that you feel like doesn't get much of the stage or the light, whatever, I mean, what it sounds like is your mom had conviction about living a particular way in her faith and was consistent with that. And over time, it was like exponential influence where, I think a lot of young people today are looking for, social media influence and all of the woohoo and all this stuff. But like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what a testament to just being committed to loving people, serving people, honoring people. That's
And,
powerful, man.
and being
Thousands of
faithful to
people
it.
showing up. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. I mean, you said that about like being an influencer, and now you could go on your social media, you can say, oh, there's 1 point some thousands or however the
Right.
people that are following and likes and feedback. This is before the era of that. This is in the era of telephone calls and letters. And I think that's for my brothers and I why it was so surprising. Like if we knew, yeah, my mom has, 6,000 people following her and gets all these comments back and she's sharing these stories and stuff and getting, it's like, nope, it was just one-on-one individual letters, individual phone calls, follow up over decades with people, um, and and just consistent being there, praying, journaling, and following. Oh, I wonder if God's done this. I'm going to send someone a note and follow up with them. Or how about this? And I'm praying for this to happen, and God's going to open the door for this, and someone's going to be healed or get into school or something that. And she just did it the old fashioned way. And that was where it was so super shocking to us because we had no way of measuring that until she's
Right.
gone. And then all these people show up and start sharing it. And you're like, oh, that's that's the real relational influence that's so powerful. So it's not a metric. It's just the power of the heart to heart connection with people and how transformative that is when God's involved.
Man, would you say that that has, I mean, I know it's been almost 20 years. So like, did that change the trajectory of how you, I guess, in your own journey of following the Lord and the simplicity of the call of who I am, regardless of what job or what I'm doing? I mean, has that had big impact on you?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has had an impact on me because part of that reconciliation of faith for me was understanding, okay, here's the legalistic side and the rules and the following and the choices uh, of faith, and then there's the I learned from my dad, and then there's this side from my mom of, okay, what are we open to? If God's telling me to do something, am I going to go do it? Even if it doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to me, if I don't know why, or if God brings someone to my mind, am I just going to stop and pray for them right now? And then encourage them or let them know, or if I don't let them know, follow up with them later and share what God's saying. Um, but I think so much of what I learned, so just about me a little more, by nature, I'm an introvert. I recharge alone. I love reading. I am great with going away for a weekend, and I could go wait for a weekend for a cabin and just have a book and some other stuff and be totally peaceful and fine. And my wife, who's the extrovert, would think that would be torture, to not talk to anyone for days. Um, and yet, uh, the power of relational one-on-one ministry and loving the person in front of you has been
Yeah.
I think a defining part of understanding what God's called me to,
Hmm.
and seeing the transformative power of that with others. Um,
Hmm.
and so that's I think just definitely comes from my mom. I've been influenced by her and then reinforced by that, and seeing that and going, um, that's in what I do professionally and personally, that this is the way I choose to engage and have learned to love engaging, even though it might be draining for me personally and I have to go
Hmm.
recharge alone sometimes. Uh, it's uh, it's really the calling of saying, this is how God wants us to love each other, and
Yeah.
that comes from my mom.
That's amazing. That is so cool. That's so powerful. And even, I mean, I think going back to your grandparents and even, cause you guys, is it, how would I say this? Is it faith Jewish or is it like Jewish from Israel? Does that make
Actually,
sense? Do you
like
know what I'm saying?
Jews from Israel who were living in Poland and then fled the
Wow.
persecution of the Nazis in Poland.
Wow.
So actually, I guess, racially and culturally from Israel and Jewish, and then fled to the U.S. and then walked away
Wow.
from the faith. Like still,
Wow.
and to some extent changed their name. Like my grandfather didn't like his name; it was too Jewish, so he picked up. Great grandpa was picked up the name the Duke, and then my grandfather was Little Duke, and then that got passed on to me as the first son to come along a generation later, the first grandson. So that became my name, Duke, also. But it was walking away from. I don't even want to be called my name anymore because it had
Wow.
such Jewish connotations.
Wow. Man, I had no idea.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously we don't know a lot about people's stories, but that, I mean, you could write a book about that. Even the story of the Brigham Young piece and the whole, I'm like, what a
kind of
unique,
fascinating. Yeah.
to say the
Uh,
least. Wow.
the choices apparently at that point were, there's two small towns in between Salt Lake and Seattle. It was either Boise or Portland. Which do we choose? And somehow Portland was the choice. I don't know how, but uh,
Yeah.
yeah, those were we can't go back to either spot.
Wow. Wow. Crazy. Well, man, and currently you're the executive director of the Tacoma Rescue Mission, but there's obviously been some different roles along the way. I know at one point, correct me if I'm wrong, were you running another nonprofit organization at one point before this?
I have. I've been in
Okay.
leadership of several nonprofits in the last decade or so. Um, when I graduated from college, so my degree is actually pre-med. And I was
Okay.
trying to figure out whether I wanted to go to physical therapy school or medical school, or um, what my options were. And a friend actually challenged me and said, "Hey, have you ever lived around poverty?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, I'm going to move into the downtown part of Tacoma, which at that point had a lot of gang violence. Had just been on the national news for a shootout between gangs and the Marines and some stuff that was going on." Um, And so he said, "Well, I think I'm gonna take a job working downtown. I'd love some guys to come live with me. Would you consider taking a year?" We read a book about the flight of the middle class from Detroit and kind of the collapse of Detroit. This is in the early '90s.
Hmm.
And so I thought, I'll just take a year off and go. I can apply to school and get in, and I'll just start next year. And so I guess it's kind of like my AmeriCorps year. I'll just go do some service and hang out and live with some buddies and take a break from school. Um, and the way I made ends meet was I was volunteering in Young Life as a Young Life leader. I was coaching sports, and because I knew all the kids in the area, I was substitute teaching because I could pick up jobs as a sub, and most of the kids knew me from either Young Life or sports I was coaching. So it kind of made it easy because I pretty much knew kids in every class, and I could control the classes and just say whatever. And so I was living on, I think my total living expenses were like $350 a month. We were living in a slum house in downtown Tacoma.
Wow.
And we chased the mice with golf clubs in the evening for entertainment in the house. Um, there was a crack house across the street from us. We sit on the porch and I'd play guitar and watch people like kind of like skulk around and like just debate whether I was going to turn them in as they walked in or out of the house. And um, just really interesting. dichotomy of the community and seeing this. And then on the other, there's that house across the street, and then right next to us is a lady who's in her 90s who's lived in this house for her entire life, and
Wow.
is kind of scared to death to come in and out, but this is her home and she lives here, and she's really sweet, and so got to know her too. So I'm kind of seeing this community, and again, I've never lived around this. This is exposure, and we started playing with the kids in the neighborhood, and we go play basketball with them at the park down the street, and uh, really my again, doing Young Life, my passion was working with kids and middle school and high school kids. And midway through the year, a principal at a local school said, "Would you come work at our school?" Unsolicited. Um, had me interview some people. The people I interviewed with offered me a job. I didn't know. I didn't even know it was an interview. I showed up in like jeans and a sweatshirt because I was going to a baseball game after that, and and I turned them down because it was working for a nonprofit. And I didn't know what a nonprofit was, so I thought they couldn't pay me. And I'm like, I'm already doing enough stuff. I don't need to take another volunteer job on. So my dad heard about it, and he was upset with my life choices at that point. So he said, "Duke, do they offer benefits, and are they grant funded?" I said, "I don't know." So he said, "Call him back." So I called him back, and he said, "Yep, we're grant funded, and we have benefits." And my dad said, "Just take it. It's a job, and they'll pay you." And he's like, "Here's how it'll work. They'll pay you for a little while, then the grant will run out, and they won't, and you'll be out of a job again. Then you can go on. But at least now, while you're living in this poverty situation and this weird stuff, at least you'll have benefits and a job." And so he's like, "That's, um, I want you to be able to get your teeth checked and stuff like that. And then it'll go away, and you'll be able to go on to med school and go on to your real life, and everything will get going." So that was, so I took this job and I started working with kids who were low income. No one in the family graduated from high school before. Um, and my job was to help push them to, could we get them to go to college, and that they were failing at least one or more of their classes. And so for the next 18 years, we started with 60 kids. And by the time I left, we were working with a little over 3,000 people a
Wow.
year across the county, helping kids and youth get to, seeking higher education as a way out of poverty. And I, within a year, I was the director, and then I kind of worked my way up, and I was the vice president, CEO of the organization that we were working for. Um, and then, multiple things kind of happened. So I would have stayed there forever. I loved it. It was great. I had this friend who kept calling me saying, "Duke, I think you're supposed to work with homeless." And he'd call me every 6 months to a year. And I'm like, "Nope, I'm not." And he's like, "I keep praying about it. I keep thinking you're supposed to work with homeless." Like, "Nope, I have no desire to work with people that are experiencing homelessness. I like what I do with kids. Like, it's great. And the life's ahead of them." And so this guy, I don't know if you've had him on your podcast, but probably I know you know him. It's Scotty Kessler.
Oh
kept
yeah, I've had them
kept
on.
at it for years. And classic Kess, he doesn't even remember how many years he called me. He's like, well, he finally took me to breakfast. Like, we're going to breakfast, and then he took me to dropped me off. He's like, another guy that we knew, um, uh, named Jamie Anderson. He's like, he's working at this place. You should go see what they're doing. So I end up at this place working with homeless families, not working, but seeing this. And all of a sudden there's these moments, and I can share multiple points where God opened my eyes to stuff.
Wow.
So sitting on my front porch in the downtown Tacoma, I'm just doing this till I go to med school, and then having this experience of like God showing me like the heart and needs of the people that were coming in and out of the crack house, or the kids who stole my basketball and my alarm clock and stuff because I left my window open, and not being mad at them, but going, they just don't have anything. And why am I mad at them? Uh, like there's, and like, I still knew they were good kids. Like I still enjoyed them, even though, they did this. And just different things where you have these kind of, like, again, layers pulled open or pulled away from your eyes to see more stuff. And so in the middle of this, I was driving through downtown Tacoma, and I had this moment where I'm driving down what was a really bad part of the town, and seeing, I like literally seeing, I can see the prostitute and the pimp across this corner watching her. And where there was a knife fight, the week before, and I'd seen the aftermath of that. And Here's guys that are coming out of a bar and the life situation there, and just crying, just having not just seeing the facts of the situation, but suddenly feeling like I've seen the heart of the situation, seen the heart of the people and the need, and then feeling like God saying, this is your calling, like this is the community I've called you to. Because for years I was like, I'm just here in Tacoma. Initially, I was just here till I went off to school. But God kept calling me back and saying, no, this is the, like, I'm showing you more and more of the needs here. And so when Scotty got me to go see this family shelter and go, oh, I'm working with the kids, but have you ever thought about what the parents are going through? And how hard that is, and what they're trying to do to salvage life for their kids while they're living out of their car. And
Wow.
so again, just this like emotion, like don't know how to explain it other than the fact that you're having a conversation with God. And it feels like you have, a photo can be 1,000 words or whatever, but it's like a downpouring of God's like telling you a bunch of stuff in a pretty short period of time.
Wow.
And then you have to unpack it for a while. You have to like deal with it and wrestle with it. Like, wow, how did this really impact me? What happens? Out of that, I ended up, they needed an executive director. I said I'd be interested in talking to him. And a few months later, they hired me, and I was working there with families. Um, and then we had a crisis of funding and an issue, and the board said I had a disagreement with our board because I thought we should just, go on faith. We don't need the funding. We'll do it our own way. And they didn't feel great about it. So they said, okay, we're going to part ways with you. So I was walking away from that job, and a friend called me, not knowing anything about it, and said, hey, would you come work for the foundation at the large hospital system? And I'm like, I don't know anything about raising money. I've never worked in a foundation, but since I'm walking away from this job, I'll take it. Worked for 2 years for the large hospital system and the foundation. And then the rescue mission called me and said, would you come consider working here as our executive director? And I look at that and go, all of those were God, like first working with youth and seeing the need, then working with families and seeing homelessness need. I had to go and work in a hospital and learn about, oh, here's what it's like. And in that situation, it's Cal, you'll get this. It's like selling cars. It's okay. Hey, okay, Mr. Paulson, here's a list of 100 names or 200 names. At some point in the last 10 or 15 years, they've given something to the hospital and their wealth is high, but they might have only given 50 or 100 bucks. Go raise money. And if you don't raise $500,000 by the end of the year, you're out of a job. So start calling,
Wow.
get in front of people and say, hey, would you support this? What's going on at the hospital? And there you go. And so it's just it's straight sales and straight, but it's also, it pushed me way outside my comfort zone.
I
I'd
was
never
gonna
had to do
say,
that.
did you enjoy it at all, or were you like, especially as an introvert, I would think.
I would say I I'm not sure there's parts of it I enjoyed. So here's what I enjoyed. When I really learned and got to know people and the people that gave and believed in giving generously, so often there was a faith component to that. And so we'd
Yeah.
have a connection when I'm talking to them. And I was not the hard sale guy. I was terrible at I need you to sign this paper and give this amount by this time. I'm really good at just saying, hey, if you feel like this is something you want to support, I want you to go think about it, pray about it, and come back and you tell me what you think is going to be the best for you to come in and support this with. So, uh, which was not the system I should be doing. That's not what the sales pitch should say, but it worked. And I met my goal for that year. And then the next year they said, great, you did such a good job. Now
Wow.
your goal is $750,000. It's like, okay, so did it the next year. And I'm sure it was moving up to $1 million after that. But then I left and came over to the rescue mission. But I had to learn that and learn about fundraising, it was also fascinating. I was across the hall from the chief operations officer and the CEO of the president of the hospital, and got to see how big systems are operated. And then I come to the rescue mission where it's a large organization serving people experiencing homelessness and addiction in the community, and say, okay, now how do you I had to learn so much about operations and fundraising as well as just the
Yeah.
heart. So it's like God had to show me different stages of stuff and then say, okay, now put it together and trust me, see what'll happen.
Wow. And you've been at the rescue mission how long now?
I've been here for 7 years now.
That's hard to
So
believe it's been that long. That's crazy. That's
yeah.
crazy. What and you guys, how many locations does the rescue mission have? I know you have different types of ways that you're
Yeah.
serving people in the greater Tacoma area. Um, but like how many locations do you guys have, and what all does the rescue mission do?
Yeah, so it's pretty amazing. Even when I came here, I was like, so I had some goals. I gave up. I'm not going to med school. Here's what God's got me in and doing, and given me like skills and vision to see. Okay, here's needs and how we meet things. So the rescue mission had been on my short list of places where, um, for the first time. And the reason it was because here's an organization that's serving the people in greatest need in our community, which is where my heart was. That's where God had been really impressing on me for 25 years. But doing it with a faith context of, okay, because Christ called us to serve our neighbor in need, how do we do, where do we do this? So to be able to put those two together, because I had this faith and then I've been doing this work, but all the work I did mostly was in secular organizations. And so getting to bring those together was really a unique opportunity for me and really drew me to it, and had this place on the list of, if I ever had a chance, I would consider working there. The rescue mission, people know rescue mission and Union Gospel missions across the country. They're all separate. We're not under one umbrella, but they're all individual. But ultimately, the core has been, in Tacoma's case since 1912, but most cases in the last 50, 60 years, serving people that are experiencing homelessness, that don't have food, and then people that are addicted to drugs, are suffering with some addiction, to have a place to come for services. And it started, most often it started with food and then shelter, and then it kind of expanded into addiction. Um, so the Tacoma Rescue Mission, so over 100 years, has worked with those things. We have a shelter for men, a shelter for women, a shelter for families. We have transitional housing. We have permanent supportive housing, apartment complexes. We have an addiction recovery program just for men. We have an recovery program for women with children, so they can live in apartments and still have their kids with them. Um, and we also work on employment. We have a preschool. We have, like, there's things that we do to try and help people work on. I mean, ultimately, our goal is to, um, I would say, we're trying to respond to the parable of the Good Samaritan, and
Mm,
saying, and we use this all the time, in saying, the Good Samaritan wasn't, the story of the Good Samaritan wasn't Jesus. It wasn't the Jewish person. It wasn't the normal hero of any story. It's the other person, the person that's othered by the community, um, as a Samaritan and despised. But after multiple people walk by someone who's injured, it's a Samaritan who looks at a person on the side of the road who needs help and says their heart's moved by compassion to help. And they didn't
yeah.
just stop and say, I'm going to give you food and water and you're okay, or I'm going to put bandages on your wounds. It was, I'm going to do those things, and I'm going to put you on my own donkey, and I'm going to walk you to a place, a hotel. I'm going to give you a place to rest. I'm going to physically take care of you until I need to leave. And then I'm going to leave money to support you. And then I'm going to follow up to make sure that you're actually restored to, the full intent of who you should be, where you were before the tragedy happened. And so our goal at the rescue mission is to say, we're going to see people in need, and allow our hearts to move by compassion, say, what's that need? How do we help you? And the crazy thing is, in working with the level of poverty and need that we do, every story is different. So we have
Mm,
people, we have systems, we have places where people can come for shelter in multiple avenues, or 1,000 meals a day that we're serving to people in the community. Um, but someone might come to us who's a 15-year-old girl who's been abused and is fleeing, yeah, or someone who's been sex trafficked, or someone who's been fleeing persecution, in another country, or someone who's um, disabled and has um, physical disability, so they can't work anymore, or someone who has people that are elderly who have been scammed out of all their life savings, and uh,
oh,
suddenly living in their car in their late 60s and 70s. Um, we have, I've had people that have been here who've been architects and engineers in Seattle building skyscrapers, and professors at the University of Washington who know 4 and 5 languages, and uh, uh, sudden loss of family members, spouse died, kids died, tragedy, got it mixed up with alcohol, online gambling, whatever the addiction is that causes you to lose your connections and your balance, and suddenly you're on your own, alone. You've lost your family connections, you've lost your friend connections, and you have no support, and you're just in survival mode. And I think that's the common thread, is people that are in
Wow.
survival mode, sometimes hoping to die. Like I don't know. I'd be life would be easier if I died tonight, but I'm not dying. I keep living, and now what do I do? And so you see this whole level of need and despair, and all the stories and all the tragedy that we see, come together in this funnel that people call homelessness and addiction. And mental health plays into it. We have people that have been diagnosed with 5 or 6 different types of mental health. Oh, we think you have schizophrenia. Oh, we think you have bipolar. Oh, we think you have uh, PTSD. Oh, you think it. So, which drug do you take? How do you do stuff? And it's very um, complex. There's a lot of despair and need and just frustration for people that have just been deeply hurt and abandoned. And
Yeah.
so our job, we stand in that gap, and it's kind of where all this stuff funnels down to, um, all the broken parts of the system. So where there's failures in our DSHS and childcare system, where there's failures in our medical system, and people that have, hundreds of $1,000s of medical bills that they can't pay because my wife had twins, and we didn't have medical insurance, and then she was in the hospital, and then she died, and then I have 2 kids, and now what do I do? And I have all these bills, and like you get these stories, and you go, there's so many different ways people can end up in this system,
Yeah.
in the bottom of this funnel, and no good way out. And so our job is to come and meet these people and hear their story, and try and understand what's the next step, what's one step we can take. And we're going to be the friend that's going to come alongside you and say, right now you just need food. You just need to get some strength, and you need to have some hope with someone that says, I care for you and I'll listen to you. And we'll start with food and a safe place tonight, and then we'll have more conversation tomorrow. And how do we work through this? And step by step. And sometimes it can take years. Someone who's been homeless for 25, 30 years doesn't have identification. It can take us 6 months to a year to just reestablish identification,
Wow.
because it's really hard. You can't just go to the Social Security office and get your ID card if you've never had one, um, and you don't have your birth certificate. You don't have family connections to help you, and it's just the level of just feeling lost and abandoned, and it's heartbreaking to see. And so I think I love what we get to do here, because we get to see all the complexity in way, and you kind of lean into this with each person. Um,
Right.
and and the good news is we have 2 people a day that leave the rescue mission. We have several thousand people that come in, and then 2 people a day, so 800 people a year that are leaving, either housed or employed. So the team that's working here with people that are coming through. And so
Wow.
that's really our end goal, is being that to the Good Samaritan story, saying, okay, you are now stably in a better and stable situation, and we're trying to connect you with the faith community and others around the community, to say, here's jobs, here's people around you, here's support groups, and now you can have community again, and have a hope and purpose in life, and thrive.
Wow. Let me ask you this question: for what would you say to people that obviously have a limited perspective of homelessness, and they just see the fruits of it, and maybe they're
Hmm.
frustrated by, man, homelessness has just taken off in the area that we live. Um, o- Especially for people in the body of Christ, what would you say to somebody to help them understand?
Yeah. Um, so I get asked that a lot from people. Oh, you work in this. How do you fix it? And what I just went on telling you is that complication of, there's not an easy fix. Every story is different. I've sat down with so many people and said, what brought you here today? What's God doing to in your life, do you think? And you hear so many different stories and perspectives. And I go to churches, and people are like, "Oh, there's a guy in our parking lot that keeps coming, and what do we do?" Or someone that shows up after service and wants to talk to people, or came midweek and said they have a story, and we don't know whether to believe them or not, or how do we help them, and is this really the truth or not? Do we help them with money? Do we help them with a place to stay? Do we help them with food? And my common answer to everyone that asks me this is don't focus on the immediate need. Focus on the person.
Mm.
So every person has a need to have a connection with someone, and it's scary. It's scary for you to say, "Oh, hi, my name's Kyle. My name's Duke. What's your name?" And it's scary for that person. It's actually vulnerable for that person to tell you their name.
Mhm.
That's actually, it's for a lot of people, it might be easier to say, "Can I just get a sandwich?" than to say, "Here's my name." And oh, um, are you cold? Yeah, I am. Are there like, it's, if you think of it, it's actually more vulnerable to get into um, who the person is and try and get into to understand them a little bit more than just to say, "Oh, I can solve the need by saying I'm just going to go buy you a $2 hot dog and
Mhm.
give you some food and then walk away." Um, and so I think that's kind of my response is, are you willing to actually help someone with, like, relationally start something with them, or engage with them? And what are your real needs? Is it the classic of, not gonna lie, just want beer? Okay, are you saying that
Yeah.
just because you want some money, or there's probably more to it than that? Like, you want beer because you're just trying to survive. You just want something right now as a quick fix. There's more hurt and there's more to you than just, I'm the guy who just wants to drink beer. And so, if we really care and we want to respond, and to people of faith to say, how do we respond? It's more complex than just saying, "Do I just give them beer?" Oh, that's all they've asked me for. I solved the problem. It's no, if I really say, "Okay, what's God telling me? What's the
Mhm.
relational connection that's here?" And I'm not asking, when we talk about it, I can't fix it. I can't walk up to someone and say, "I can fix it." Yeah, I run a big rescue mission. I have know lots of resources in the community. I can't fix whatever your solution is. Like, we would have to partner together to navigate the barriers and challenges that you have. But am I willing to say, "I'll start by getting to know you, and then I also have my other friends who can help you with stuff. And would you be willing to trust us to say, we're going to walk into a relationship together, to get help?" And so it's kind of comes back around to what you talked about with my mom's, sending letters and believing God's doing work even when
Right.
we don't see it. And
Right.
um, and I think that there's a couple of, another favorite parable I have that I use. Jesus is brilliant in using parables, and um, is the parable of the sower and the seeds. And
Yeah.
I grew up with that just being, well, this is just a straight evangelism. Like, the sower's going out and sowing the seeds, and some of the seeds are going to fall on ground that has, won't bear fruit, that the birds are going to come and get it, that the weeds are going to come up and overgrow it. The sun's going to come out and bake the seeds. And then some's going to fall into the ground where it's actually going to grow. And that stuff that grows is going to actually bear fruit and 40, 60, 100 fold. And so we're in the process of doing that and saying that not everyone in this, even in God's economy of sowing seeds, 20% is success.
Mm.
And for that 20%, we're going to celebrate.
That's awesome.
And so for people that are struggling, and I talk about that with our team, 20% is success for us.
Mm.
Like, and we're going to see people we're going to help, and they're going to relapse, or they're going to fall apart, or they're going to take 3 or 4 steps forward and then disappear. And we don't know what's going to happen. And we have to trust God, and we have to keep sowing the seeds out there and say what's going to happen. And we can't fixate on, "Oh, I failed in this," or "that person let me down and what's wrong with them." You have to keep going. Okay, if God's the one that knows, He's the sower. I'm just helping, I'm going to celebrate when things do take root and grow, and we're going to invest and focus in that, and we're going to keep tending this field, trying to just do the best we can with what we have. And so that's
So
kind of the
good.
perspective of, because I think from the outside, people look in and they go, it's overwhelming. Like, there's,
Mhm.
especially on the West Coast, I get calls from across the country about what we're doing and things that are happening. And I got a call from Iowa, a big city in Iowa, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, in our city, we think we have 300 people that are experiencing homelessness in our county." And I was laughing because I was like, "That's great. Here's what, I'm like, we have 300 people tonight in our shelter." Um,
Right.
and uh, And we have thousands that are in our county on the West Coast here. And obviously Seattle and LA and San Diego and other cities have even more than we do. But there's just a huge need. And I think for the church to understand, you can't get overwhelmed. It's like saying, why can't we convert everyone to just, if everyone just understood Jesus, it would solve all these problems. Well, we're not exactly doing that successfully either. So it's
Right.
not just, well, if we could give everyone a Bible, they'd understand Jesus, or we could give everyone a house, they'd be fine. It's like, that doesn't solve the problem. It's
Yeah, the
relational.
real problem.
It's connecting to people, and it's understanding the heart. And that's where the transformation happens.
Man, is there, obviously stories are powerful. That's one of the reasons why I started this whole podcast. But do you have a story of somebody in particular who has been maybe in and out of the rescue mission? And you were like, I don't know what's going to happen. Did they relapse? Whatever. But they have since, over time, been one of these two people a day that are, call it, graduating or getting their lives back. Is there a story that you could share of somebody that's kind of been in and out, and then they finally?
Yeah. Well, there's hundreds. I mean, I my team loves it when I'm talking to people, and I can pull out stories from all ages and groups and people. And um, let me pull a couple of stories out just for context for you.
Okay.
We opened our women's shelter in 2020 for single women. We realized that there historically had been shelter for men for a long time, and there'd been shelter for families, but just a single woman without kids, there weren't many places to go, hardly any in the whole county. So we opened the shelter, and for months and months, we'd had ladies coming that are experiencing. And if you're a woman and you're homeless, you're really vulnerable. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that, but anyone that lets their mind ponder that, you're going to realize how hard that could be.
Yeah.
And so we had women that were coming for months asking, when's it going to open? Excited, wanting to know. And then pandemic hits, and we have to go through all these like extra hoops to try and get open. So we didn't know when we are going to get our final permit saying, yep, you can, it's occupy allowed today. And so long story short, former Young Life kid of mine ends up being the final fire inspector. We couldn't get someone to come for weeks and weeks, and he finally comes in and does the fire inspection, even though you weren't supposed to be coming into buildings at that point. He came in and did it and approved it and said, yep, 2 o'clock today, you're certified and sign off this, you can have people occupy this building. So we only have a few hours in the afternoon, and I send a text out to my staff saying, any women that want to come tonight, it's open. So we have probably 16 ladies that show up on almost no notice and say, can I stay here? And then I leave. I see them coming in, and I leave because it's weird to be the guy in the women's shelter. So I'm like, hey, have a great night, I'm out of here. The ladies here are going to take care of you. I come in the next morning, and I'm excited, and I say to one of our team, I'm like, how was it? And she's like, really quiet. I'm like, that's good. And she's like, no, you don't get it. I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, we only had one person stay. I'm like, what? We had 16 ladies that showed up. And she's like, yeah. And they loved it. We did a tour, and they saw the showers and the lockers and the cool beds. And we had a church had made quilts for all the ladies. They had custom bedding and homemade quilts they could take, and a goodie baskets. And we had all this stuff decked out. And she's like, but then the questions started to come. And the questions were things like, I kind of have an appointment at 2 a.m. I got to keep. Can I leave and come back? And our rules are no. When you come in the evening, you stay till morning, and we have breakfast, and it's not a come and go hotel. I'm like, no, we really want you to stay. Oh, and then kind of backing away. And then someone else like, I have some people I need to check in with, and if they don't know where I am, I don't know what's going to happen. So I got to go check in with them, and then I'll come back. Or my boyfriend, is he going to know where I'm at? Because if he finds me here, he's going to be mad, and am I going to be safe? Um,
Wow.
and one by one, they just disappeared. And the only lady that stayed because while they were giving the tour to all these other people and talking about stuff and answering questions, one lady just sat down on a bed and fell asleep, like literally
Wow.
sitting there, fell asleep. And so
Wow.
our staff like laid her down, put a blanket on her, and she just slept through the night. And she woke up in the morning, she freaked out because she had all those same arrangements and concerns. And what's going to happen to me? I just was here for a night. And So she freaked out, and they had to like calm her down and help her, but it was just exhaustion, and she collapsed.
Wow.
And it took us months to get to even like it took us multiple months to have more than 10 women a night that would spend the night with us, because we had to
Wow.
establish trust as a place of safety and security, that they could like that they would believe us, that they could stay here for multiple days and extended time. We were going to work with them, uh, and that people couldn't come in and get them. That they just again trust.
Wow.
Now we're full every single night, and
Wow.
there's women that line up out the door saying, "Hey, can we come in?" But it took us
How many
6 months
women
to
can
get
you
to that
house
point.
in it?
76
Wow.
women a night. And so again, and that's a general story of that trust and relationship. But you realize, reading between the lines of the pressures and stress and what they were experiencing just to survive, and the deals that they have to make, and the situations they're in, how vulnerable that is. Um, and then I've got another story that I use of um, um, his nickname at the shelter when I got here was Angry Mike. Angry Mike, when I got here 7 years ago, was in his 70s at that point. I think he was 70 when I got here. And he was called Angry Mike because he'd been homeless. He grew up in Parkland, just outside of town here. His family had a traumatic situation, fire, both of his parents killed. He was a teenager. He didn't know what to do. He didn't have family, so he was camping and living. He'd been living on the streets or alone for over 50 years.
Wow.
He didn't have identification. We'd been working with him. It took us multiple years, took us almost 3 years to get him an ID card that he was a real person, because we couldn't even find records for him. He was called Angry Mike because the way he made himself valuable at the rescue mission was he would cycle in and out. So when the weather was warm, he'd stay outside because you can't stay here forever. When the weather was colder, he'd come in. And he'd make himself useful by he'd walk around with a little like a golf cart, and he had a plastic bag on it, and he'd pick up trash up and down the street that people would leave. And he was called Angry Mike because when he'd see someone drop litter, he'd start screaming at him, like, "What the F are you doing? You have to drop it." Da, da, da." So all the guys in the shelter called him Angry Mike because he'd yell and scream at him when they litter, because he'd go around and have to clean it up. But he actually was a really sweet guy.
Hmm.
He had some anger, and he would let out. He was not afraid to tell you if you pissed him off. But he we were working on a project for chronically homeless, and we're still working on this here to build 285 units of housing for chronically homeless in our county. And the council asked if I could bring someone to share, and I asked Mike if he would come, and he said no. And I said, think about it. And so he thought about it for a couple of weeks, and he said he really thought about it, and he said, I'll come. But I'm not going to say anything nice about the rescue mission. I'm not going to say anything nice about you. I'm going to tell it just like it is. I'm like, great. That's why I want you to come by. So I pick him up on the morning. We're going to go to talk to the council, and we've been trying to get him into housing for years. This is like 3 or 4 years into me being here. He's now 74 years old. I go to pick him up. He's got a new coat that he went to a thrift store and got. He's combed his hair, and I drive him to the where the council meets, and he starts twitching and freaking out. I hadn't thought about this. The council meets in the county building. The county building is where everyone goes when you have misdemeanor charges and you're arrested and you
Wow.
go to the county for jail. The only experience he's had in this building for 40 plus years is being arrested and being brought
Wow.
up on charges, and the police bringing you in, and he has to go through a metal detector and all the stuff to go into the county to talk to the council. And he is just, but he's determined to do it. He walks in, and um, the council's going through the stuff. He has to sit with me and wait for half an hour. And then I said, hey, I'd like to introduce my friend Mike. He wanted to know about someone who's been chronically homeless. He's going to tell you. He stood up and told this story about his family dying, about the fire, about him living on his own. He has kids. I didn't like. He told stuff that I'd never heard before. That he has kids, and there's some good Christian kids, but he's too far gone. He doesn't want them to know about him, so he hides from them, so he doesn't know who he is. He like hears about them once in a while. He like checks on them remotely. He like the story that just showed the person of who he is and that he actually does care. And he flat out told the council, because someone said, what do you want? He's like, everyone wants a home. He said, I would love a home. I know I'm not work. I don't have any value. I don't have a job. I can't get a job. I don't have any way to work or other than just odd jobs around the community doing stuff. So I can't pay for anything. So people like me will never have a place to live. So I'm just stuck and I'm just going to die on the street someday. And I hope they find my body and that they know my name.
Wow.
So, and then he, they said, okay, thank you so much. And thank you for coming. He gives me a big hug and he disappears. I don't see him for a week because he went on a bender because he was so amped up. And so he
Yeah.
got drugs and disappeared. I see him a week later and I'm like, Mike, can I get you a pizza and can we just sit and talk? And we did. And he apologized. He's like, sorry, I disappeared. And I couldn't stay there anymore. And he literally ran out of the building and disappeared. He wouldn't let me drive him home. And but he said, thank you for letting me share my story. No one's listened to me. He's like, your staff listens to me, but no one else cares. So that's why I keep coming back. So the good news is, about 2 years ago, we did get him into a place to live. And so he is now living just north of here we found some people that are taking care of him. But it took us 5.5 years from when I got here to get him into a place.
Wow.
And obviously years and years after that, it was basically, I'm like, Mike, I don't want you to die in the street. What are we going to do to help you? And so you see that and go, that's just, and like I said, there's all the range in between. Here's the women, here's the teenagers that come to us, here's the, young adults, here's people that have lost their lives because of gambling, because of addiction, because of
Wow.
mental, mental challenges or physical challenges or whatever. And parents of kids and grandparents, and it's like you just don't know. And I'd say one of the other things that is humbling from my job's perspective is, um, I'll get calls from people saying, "Can you just tell me if my son's alive?"
Wow.
Or can you tell me if my brother has anyone seen him? We haven't heard from him in a year. Has he been through here? If I give you a name, can you just tell me? And for privacy reasons, we can't just say who stays here or post a list of anything. Calling someone back and saying, I can't confirm anything because we're careful with our privacy. But if you come down here at 3 o'clock today, you might be able to see someone you know, or a mom with a teenage son that's standing outside the shelter, just saying, "Can I just come in and look, see if my son's here alive tonight?" And it's the realization that it's a very tough like community and family situation also. So we just have such a wild spectrum of stories and people and needs. And again, it's faithfully saying, okay, God, what do you want us to do next? How
Yeah.
do we help the next person? Um, and like that village we're building out in Spanaway, it's going to be for our chronically homeless, for people like Mike who don't have a place to go.
Mm.
And shelter, like temporary shelter, isn't meant to be for them. So how can we treat people with dignity and respect and love, um, and the way with the value God sees them with? So that's our challenge here.
Man. Wow. Let me ask you this. How do you take care of you in the midst of this? I got to imagine. I mean, I can hear, even as you're sharing, I can hear the deep felt like love. I can hear in your when you're sharing, like even the emotions of feel these people and the weight of life and all the things that's crushing to them and things that have happened. How do you take care of yourself in the midst of this where it doesn't crush you? You learn a rhythm of, I mean, I need what I need to make so that I can keep coming back to do this, because I would imagine certain people are going to be like, this is too much.
Oh yeah, we have staff. We have fantastic staff people who've been here for a year or two, and they say, I can't do it anymore. It hurts too much. And then we have people, and we have one lady that's been our staff for over 30 years now, and she loves it. Personally, I'm blessed. The nice thing about having a family and 4 kids is going when I hit our door and things are going on with the kids, and we need to run here and do this and manage that. Like I can have a pretty good break and say, okay, now I just need to go be dad and husband or do something and get away. Um, uh, I have disciplines that you have as just learning in leadership to say, okay, what am I doing physically to work out? What am I doing to be careful with what I eat? What am I doing to make sure I have a quiet time, a time to center myself and say, okay, God, what are you saying to me? They have some good friends for accountability around me who uh, walk with me. I would say one of my biggest challenges here at the mission is how to encourage and engage and motivate a team of because I'm saying that, and you can hear how it impacts me. I'm not the frontline person. Like I go down in the shelter. I go down into the shelter, and I can go in and learn stories and talk to people and see things. But really, the hands and feet that are doing it are my frontline staff who are actually 20, like, doing 10-hour shifts in the shelter at night.
Mm,
And or the case managers who are meeting with 6 or 7 people a day and hearing these stories and saying, I'm trying to help you out. And and those aren't high paying jobs. And I can't tell you how many uh single women with huge hearts and have come out of some traumatic backgrounds of their own that are saying, yeah, I'm working here because God's asked me to give back and I can
mm,
love someone and this is what I do. And how hard they work and how much they hear and how difficult that is. And so part of my job is hearing them and sharing the stories and supporting and engaging them and saying, thank you so much. And,
yeah.
hey, it is hard. And I think that I'm humbled by the team I get to work with. So I get to work with some really, really amazing servant-hearted people who said, this is what God's asked us to do and called us to do. And we'll do it for as long as we can. And bless people who can't do it anymore and say, I can't
Mhm.
keep this up. And other people are like, nope, I feel like I can keep going. It's truly a mission field. And it's like people are
Yeah.
I back to my mom. My mom, I was the oldest son. I was the reason that she came to Jesus. So she's like, I dedicated you to God. God's going to use you. I used to get so mad at her kid. I'm like, darn it, mom, that means I'm going to have to go to be Africa and be a missionary. I don't want to live in Africa. I don't want to wear a loincloth. I don't want to, have to worry about lions and
Loincloth.
elephants and stuff like that. Like that just sounds gross to me. And so I would literally get mad at her, like, stop saying that, mom. I don't want to be dedicated to God. And now I
Yeah.
look back and, I can't tell mom that, but I'm like, I'm doing what she wanted.
Yeah.
Like this, when she said you were dedicated to God, he's going to use you for something. Like, okay, that's why we're in it. Like, this is what God has. So we get to be missionaries. You don't have to go to Africa. You don't have to go to, China. You can do it right here and the needs here. And if it wasn't for the faith community that supports us, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. Like the rescue mission is here because of the churches and the people of faith that support us. And
Yeah.
honestly, it's not the churches that are supporting us. Like we don't have any churches that are saying, here's, $100,000, go do this. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in the community that are saying, here's $50. Thanks for what you do.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
the average gift size at the rescue mission is like $80. And so, but that $80 added up and enough people are given turns into millions of dollars. And that allows us to rate what otherwise is there's no profit in this business. You don't get any revenue off operating a shelter and giving out free food and,
Right.
and hiring staff and mental health counselors and substance abuse counselors to come and talk to people who can't pay for anything. This is truly a community mission field, and
Wow.
and I'm just blessed to get to be part of it.
Bro, Duke, so good. We are coming to a close. So what I always ask our guests to do is to pray for the audience that's going to hear this. And I would I think even the story in the episode today is going to be challenging for a lot of people in a good way to really think about homelessness very differently. But I think too, for just people's hearts to be challenged and how to love people and meet people right where they're at and get beyond the hurdle of homelessness in some people's mind. Oh, that's frustrating or annoying, or it's ruining this part of my community. And where instead it's an opportunity. Would you just pray for our audience, and then I'll wrap
Yeah,
things up and we'll bring the episode to a close.
yeah, absolutely. Gosh, Heavenly Father, thanks so much for God. Thanks that you love us. Thanks that you love
Hmm.
every single person. Thank you for your care and that you see every person as a unique masterpiece that you've made. Lord, I ask that that you would bless Kyle, bless this. I thanks for the chance to get to share today, and that people would have the experience of having you just open their eyes a little more to people around them. And it doesn't have to be someone that's homeless, but just the needs of people around them and the heart that you have, uh, and just the wisdom and discernment from the Holy Spirit of what the needs are that are around us. That how can we help? How can we be faithful to your call as a believer that says, my job is to honor and love my God because he loved me so much. And first, I'm going to honor and love him. And then second, I'm going to love my neighbor. God, I ask you to open our eyes on how to do that, and that people would who hear this would be able to be blessed and challenged by that. In Jesus' holy name, I ask these things. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Duke. And thank you, everybody that's either watching or listening. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. One of the greatest ways that you can help us here at Storybox is to share. And so share on your stories on Facebook, share on Reels, on Instagram, share on TikTok. You can find us on all of those as well. But we want to get stories out. And what Duke is sharing today is powerful. And so we're going to put all of Duke's connection stuff and details in the show notes. You can find it down there. Is it okay, Duke, if people want to reach out and learn more or any of that?
Yeah,
What would be a good way
absolutely.
for them to do that? Would it be social media,
Uh,
email?
yeah, so the Rescue Mission has social media. So and our website is uh, www.trm.org. So for Tacoma
Mhm.
Rescue Mission.
Yep.
And then you can find us if you will look for Tacoma, I think it's Tacoma Rescue Mission or Tacoma Mission on Instagram and Facebook and all those ways. And then,
Great.
yeah, reach out to us, and also just info@trm.
Great. I'll put all of that in the show notes. Awesome. Awesome. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Please like, share, subscribe, whatever platform you're on, follow us, share it, all of that stuff. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for more Storybox episodes to come in the future. All right. Thanks again for joining us today, Duke.